My grandmother gave me a penthouse for my birthday, but my mother tried to take it away from me to please her new husband. Hi there. I turned 15 3 days ago, and my grandmother gave me a very special and wonderful gift. She transferred the ownership of her penthouse to me. My grandmother doesn't live there herself. She has a house in the suburbs, but she's owned this apartment for a couple of years and sometimes stays there when she's in town. I was absolutely thrilled because the last year had been absolutely terrible for me. First, my father left the family. He was always a terrible workaholic and never found time for either me or my mother. But still, my parents' split was a huge shock to me. My mother didn't even tell me about it until my father quietly moved out almost a year ago. It turned out they had already filed for divorce by then. They decided they couldn't live together anymore because my father was too overwhelmed with everything. They never told me exactly what he was so overwhelmed about. He didn't even say goodbye to me in person. After he moved out, he sent me one last message: be good. That was it. I never saw him again. Soon after, my parents officially separated. Mom got the house and full custody of me and my brother. Dad retained visitation rights, but he never used them, so I don't know what's happening with him now. And as if all that weren't enough, about 2 months ago, Mom told me she'd been dating a man for almost 3 months. Let's call him Robert. They were in love, and she didn't want to waste time. She wasn't getting any younger with age after all, so they got engaged. I didn't even have time to fully process that Mom had a new lover. At that very moment, she announced she was engaged, and this man would become my stepfather. It was too much. I was really upset because I think it's impossible to really get to know the person you're planning to marry in 5 months. But she told me not to worry. A couple of weeks later, she introduced me to him, and he seemed very reserved and cold. However, with my brother, he was completely different. He was very playful. At first, I thought it was just because my brother was only 4, and it was easier to fool around with him. But a few weeks later, my mom told me something that completely changed my perception of both of them. So 2 weeks ago, my mom told me to sit down and explain that the reason she and her fiancé got engaged so quickly was because he had been offered a really good job, and he was going to take it. But to do that, they would have to move to another state. They were going to leave me here with my grandmother because my mom didn't think I would want to leave my life behind and come with them. However, I told her I wouldn't mind moving if it meant I could stay close to Mom, since my dad had already abandoned me. But Mom tried to convince me it was a bad idea, since my school was here, all my friends were here, and I was better off here. I insisted I wanted to go with her. In the end, she simply blurted out that she wanted me to stay with Grandma because of Robert. He only wanted to take my brother with him because he was little, and we could still build a good relationship with him, while I was already too old and would never be his real daughter. And as it turned out, he didn't like it when I told Mom that 5 months was too young to get engaged to someone you didn't really know. He thought I was still mentally stuck in the days of Mom and Dad's marriage and wouldn't be able to adjust to him. And Mom agreed with him, so she wanted me to stay and figure out my life on my own.
Her words really hurt me. Mom should have been on my side and not abandoned me just because Robert wanted her to. It's not that I didn't want to live with my grandmother. She's a wonderful woman, and I love her very much. But I also love my mother, so it was hard for me. I tried to argue with her, but I realized it was useless. Then I told her I didn't want to wait until they arrived and wanted to move in with my grandmother that very day. Of course, that wasn't possible right away, but within a few days, I had packed my things and was ready to leave. Mom tried to convince me that she still loved me, but in reality, she was only thinking about herself. I didn't speak to my mother at all for the last couple of days I spent at home and didn't even say goodbye to her on the day I left. Honestly, I didn't think it was necessary. The only person I said goodbye to was my younger brother because I knew I would miss him very much. I've been living with my grandmother ever since, and she's been incredibly compassionate. She's my mother, by the way. I have absolutely no relationship with my other grandparents, which isn't surprising since they had almost no relationship with my father. My grandmother is incredibly kind and caring, and living with her has been quite easy. I feel her genuine love, and she thinks my mother acted terribly. Apart from the commute to and from school, everything is great in the new place. I keep in touch with my brother and call my mother every evening just to talk to him. I don't talk to her.
So, 3 days ago, I celebrated my birthday at home. To be honest, it wasn't me who organized the party, but my grandmother. She invited a couple of my close friends from school whom she found through my Facebook page, and some relatives. It was a huge surprise for me, and the party lifted my spirits a bit because I was feeling really down after my mom sent me to live with my grandmother. But after we cut the cake, my grandmother announced the gift she had prepared for me. It was a real shock. She said that for now, her lawyer would act as my trustee for the property, but once I turned 18, the apartment would be mine entirely. It was the best news I'd heard in a long time, and I hadn't even thought about sharing it with my mother. But yesterday, I found out that someone told my mother about my grandmother's gift. Probably one of the party guests. I don't know who, and it doesn't matter anymore. I was incredibly angry when she called that evening and said she'd heard about the gift my grandmother had given me, and after talking with Robert, they decided he wanted to adopt me, if I could persuade my grandmother to sign over the deed to him. I don't know why, but she genuinely expected me to be happy about this news, since it meant I could finally go with them. But in reality, I wasn't happy at all and told her I'd never do that and that she didn't need to call me anymore. Then I ended the call. She called back a couple of minutes later, but I didn't answer. Then she wrote me a message, and this is what it said. "I'm so sorry if you felt bad that I tried to live by Robert's rules and adjust to him, but you have to understand that after my divorce from your father, he was the only one who was truly there for me. Of course, I had family support, but that's different. He was there emotionally and even financially. There's a lot you don't know because I didn't want you to get a bad impression of your father, but he's not the most generous person. The divorce settlement and the alimony I receive are absolutely paltry, and the child support is laughably small. I hope you haven't forgotten that your father was the main breadwinner in our family, not me. I'm lucky he left me the house, otherwise I wouldn't even be able to pay rent. Our lifestyle was always very expensive. You know that with him, I never had to worry about money. But after he left, everything changed, and I couldn't let you feel that. Even taking on extra shifts, I couldn't earn as much as he did. When I started dating Robert, he was the one who was there, the one who took responsibility. I know he's not very kind to you, but that's only because he had a past relationship where the children from the previous marriage became a stumbling block and everything fell apart in the end. You have to take his traumas into account too. And then I knew that my mother would take excellent care of you, so I was sure I would leave you in good hands. I didn't abandon you. You live with your grandmother, and you know that she would never let you feel alone. I just wanted you to be able to think about my happiness too. And now that I've arranged everything so that you can come with us, I want you to agree and do what Robert expects of you so that you and I can be together. Your brother misses you very much too. I know you're angry, but I also know that you miss me. You love me, and I love you. So answer quickly, I love you."
That message actually gave me pause for a moment, but that last part just pissed me off. Mom wanted to do whatever Robert said, and she expected the same from me. It was ridiculous, smug, and weak, and I thought Mom had completely lost her individuality. So while the message softened me a little at first, it ultimately left me with nothing but bitterness. Half an hour later, I told her I wasn't going to do anything Robert wanted, and that she could leave with him and leave me with Grandma, as she'd originally planned. I had nothing else to say because, frankly, her behavior really disappointed me. And when I talked to Grandma about it, she said she would never,
under any circumstances, sign over the ownership to Robert because she barely knew him and definitely didn't trust him. She was sure he'd just sell the apartment and I wouldn't get a dime of it. So in a way, it's a good thing I didn't agree to Mom's offer. But Mom wasn't about to take no for an answer. This morning, she showed up at Grandma's house with my brother. Luckily, I was at school when she arrived. As soon as I got home, Grandma told me Mom had come to talk to me personally about the offer she'd made the night before, which I'd pretended to ignore. I immediately clarified that I hadn't ignored anything. I had actually responded to her message and made it very clear that this wasn't happening. I wanted her to stick to her original plan because I hadn't intended to persuade Grandma to sign the property over to Robert. We don't trust him, and I had made that clear, so I don't understand why she's still pretending not to understand. I was very abrupt and responded harshly, but can you blame me? So Mom started crying and said she was just trying to make everyone happy, but no matter how hard she tried, it wasn't working. I was furious that she was sitting there in the living room crying. Although really, I should be the one crying, because I was the one abandoned by both parents. I told her to stop and said she had turned everything upside down. She wasn't trying to make everyone happy, she just wanted to make herself happy and expected everyone around her to bend over backwards for it. And maybe everyone else was willing to put up with it, but not me. I had my own life, and I wasn't going to ruin it by running after her and trying to make sure she was okay. This stunned her, and soon after, she left. Later, I realized she had blocked me. Now I feel guilty for telling her, so I want to ask, was it wrong for me to tell my mom that she was selfish and only cared about her own happiness?
It's been 4 days since my mom came to visit, and we haven't been in touch since. She blocked me on the first day, and later my grandmother told me that my mom blocked her too. That's pretty ungrateful of her. My grandmother takes care of me without even demanding child support from my mother because she has her own money. She does this purely out of kindness and love for me. I can't imagine anyone giving up a well-deserved retirement to raise their grandchildren, but that's exactly what my grandmother did. I think my mother should be grateful for this, but instead, she blocks her. I have a lot of anger towards my mother and even more questions that I still don't have answers to. I just really hope that sooner or later, the whole truth comes out.
My father came to visit me this evening. It turns out that my grandmother contacted him, but she didn't tell me anything because she wasn't sure he would actually come and she didn't want to give me false hope. Anyway, he came as soon as he found out that my mother was engaged to Robert. There were so many revelations, and I'm still trying to digest it all. I was very surprised by my father's visit, and even more so when he hugged me and said he was so sorry. In the end, he sat my grandmother and I down and started telling him everything he knew. He said that he and my mother had been losing love for each other for a long time, but they stayed together for me because they didn't want to break up the family. And then, about 3 years ago, my father started an affair with a coworker. He really wanted to tell my mother, but he never found the courage. Finally, my mother found out about a year ago and filed for divorce right then and there. She told him that she would only keep it a secret if he stayed away from us. She laid out a whole list of conditions. He had to leave the house completely to her. She had to have full custody of me and my brother, and while he would have visitation rights, he couldn't exercise them unless she gave him permission. She also demanded huge alimony and property division payments, and he agreed to all of them. The only thing he wanted in return was for her to keep his infidelity a secret and never tell me because he didn't want me to hate him and think he was a cheater. So far, my mother has kept her word, but at the cost of me having no contact with him. He also apologized for always being at work and never taking the time to develop a close relationship with me. But according to him, my mother was partly to blame for this. She always wanted more, and so he had to work endlessly because the lifestyle she demanded was something he couldn't afford without a grueling work schedule. He said it wasn't an excuse, but he still wanted me to know it wasn't all his fault. I kind of understand that, but it's all hard for me to accept.
But anyway, he said the reason he broke his promise to Mom and came to see me without her knowledge was because in the message Grandma left him, she mentioned Robert and wanted to ask if Dad knew him. That's why he was so quick to come.
Dad not only knew Robert, but he also understood exactly what kind of person he was and wanted to warn us. It turns out Mom, Dad, and Robert all hung out in the same social circle back in college. My parents were already a couple then, but Robert had always been in love with Mom. And on the eve of graduation, when they all went out for drinks, Robert confessed his feelings to her. Mom was dating Dad at the time, so she naturally rejected him, but she only told Dad 2 weeks later, adding that she was confused about her feelings. Because of this, they decided to take a break from their relationship. According to my dad, their break lasted almost 2 months, and during that time, my mom went on a couple of dates, including with Robert. But nothing good came of it. Eventually, she went back to my dad. When they got back together, my dad told her he didn't want her to talk to Robert because it made him uncomfortable, and for a while she agreed. However, later that year, he found out she was still talking to him, and it resulted in a huge fight, after which they almost broke up. Then Robert came to my dad's house. After that fight, they got into a fight because Robert thought it would impress my mom. Instead, she only got angry at him for the violence, especially after she had already made it clear she only wanted to be friends and nothing more. Ultimately, she cut him out of her life completely. My dad said Robert had always been unstable and a shitty person.
After Mom stopped talking to him, he moved away after college, and no one heard from him for many years. But now Dad thinks Mom and Robert got back together a couple of years ago because she once mentioned hearing from friends that he was back in town. He's not sure when exactly Mom started talking to Robert again, but if they're engaged, that definitely means she cheated on him too, and all the conditions she set in the divorce are automatically null and void. Dad said he was going to talk to Mom directly, but first he wanted me to meet with her myself and sort things out. He promised to wait, and then after I talked to Mom, he could do whatever he saw fit. I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, and my head is in complete disarray because I don't know who to believe. Neither of my parents were nice to me, and this whole story is a complete mess.
So I finally talked to my mom, and I didn't tell her about meeting my dad. I just wanted to talk to her privately and hear her side of the story. She blocked me, so I had no choice but to show up unannounced. My dad came to visit 3 days ago, and yesterday I finally got up the courage to talk to my mom. She was, of course, surprised to see me at the door, but she still invited me in. Luckily, Robert wasn't home, so I could talk to her calmly and without embarrassment. At first, I apologized to her, but it was just for show, so she would start talking to me frankly. I told her that it was hard for me to accept Robert into our family so quickly, and that's why I acted the way I did. And then I got to the point. I hinted to her that the whole thing seemed too suspicious. It was just too convenient that my mom met such a wonderful man right after the divorce. It would have been the perfect opportunity to admit that she knew Robert since college, but she didn't. She just said that she was very lucky to have met him, and that was it. I knew for sure that Dad wasn't lying about the three of them knowing each other back in college because he had photos. The only thing I doubted was the details of the story he told. But as soon as Mom brazenly lied to my face about never having met Robert before, I knew who to believe. But then Mom only made things worse for herself by saying that she hadn't intended to tell me, and the reason she'd so quickly agreed to the engagement and move in with Robert was because she desperately wanted to forget everything about my father and erase him from her life. And then she told me about his betrayal, the very secret Dad had sacrificed everything for, and received from her a promise that I would never know about it. After that, I saw no point in talking to her anymore. I simply told her that I'd see her again and left. As soon as I got out, I called Dad and told him he was free to do whatever he wanted, because now I know the truth
and I know he didn't lie to me. So now Mom will finally get what she deserves. I'm not saying Dad has suddenly become a saint or that all blame has been absolved from him, but at least he's not as terrible as Mom.
Last month, after Dad talked to Mom, they did a paternity test. And luckily, my brother really was my father's son. So now Dad is fighting for full custody. And since I'm 15, I can officially state that I want full custody, and that will be taken into account. However, I still live with my grandmother because even though Dad is trying to fix everything, we still have a lot of unresolved issues. For now, I just want to stay with my grandmother because I feel completely safe with her. Mom was furious when she learned my visit was solely to find out the truth about her and Robert. Since then, she's only unblocked me once to scold me, only to immediately block me again. We haven't spoken since. As for Robert, he left Mom as quickly as he got engaged to her. As soon as he learned Dad was seeking a reduction in child support and other payments, it turned out he'd been lying to Mom the whole time. He hadn't had a job offer. His plan was to join his uncle's business, which was barely staying afloat anyway, and he was going to finance it all with Mom's money. And that's why he was trying to persuade Mom to force me to transfer the apartment my grandmother gave me to him. They'd been together for the last 2 years, and all that time, he'd simply been pulling her leg.
Long story short, Mom was deceived, and instead of feeling ashamed, she complained to all her friends about Robert. But she didn't realize that her friends were talking about her behind her back. That's how Dad found out, and then I did too. I'm incredibly grateful that Mom decided to cut me out of her life as soon as Robert asked. So Dad and I decided to try to repair our relationship, and he promised to be a better father to me. And as soon as he gets full, or at least joint custody of my brother, we'll try to be a happy and normal family. I don't know what normal means, but we'll definitely try to be at least a happy family. Well, that's all for now. What do you think about this situation? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. Watch our previous videos and be sure to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.